I think that the path that we're going down will lead to a global dark age.
We make the cartel more powerful with all the illegal guns they get from the United States, and that's not really a matter of gun control.
This is not the hill that I need to die on.
I hope we can do all of this going forward with no casualties on our side, no migrants injured, just complete, safe, secure border with no violence.
You got any final thoughts?
No, like you said, thank God. Thank God we have Trump. Thank God we have Trump.
Yeah, for at least for the AI stuff. With regard to the news this week, I don't have anything to say. Hi everybody, this is John Koenig back from Real Veteran News for Real Veteran News 39. And first thing I want to say is if you want to help us out, please just watch the entire video, not a portion of it, and leave a comment and engage with other comments. That is what helps. With regard to the news this week, I've been thinking about it and been talking to a lot of my friends and people who are close to me. And I understand that I have opinions about women in combat and female helicopter pilots. And what I understand is that this is not the hill that I need to die on. And that is fine. What I need to do is focus on the generals, AI in the military, China, and figuring out a way for us to avoid this war with China that these assholes are cooking up so they can make money. I don't want us to be killing each other's children. I don't want our two countries hating each other forever. I think that the path that we're going down will lead to a global dark age, just like the Europeans had a dark age after the Roman Empire, but this time it'll be an AI dark age. I think that AI is our destiny. I think it should go as fast as possible, and the consequences of conflict and us killing each other's children and hating each other, the two most powerful countries in the world, are unfathomable. So, with regard to the news this week, I don't have anything to say. All right, we're here with Ron Reck, good friend, one of my old friends, AI expert.
Got a lot old. I'm a longtime friend.
Yeah. He's young and longtime friend. Beautiful, handsome. Ron Reck, AI expert, government contractor with a lot of experience, a lot of know-how, a lot of good things to share. So we're going to talk about AI, Deepseek, and the competition, America, China, all that good stuff. Ron's first time on the show. Welcome, Ron.
Like John said, my name's Ron Reck. I've got about 30 years experience in using computers to analyze language, got degrees in linguistics, and it's my stuff.
Yes. Knows a lot about NLP, linguistics, and these LLM models, very passionate. So let's start talking about it. We're going to talk about Deepseek, the company, the research paper, the stock market crash, and all of that. Deepseek is this smaller Chinese AI startup, 30-year-old younger kids in it, although owned by a big hedge fund that has a lot of other people, a lot of resources, a lot of GPUs. So, Ron, do you want to start talking about Deepseek and what you think about it?
I think it's a competitive advantage. It's been out for a lot longer than it's been in the news. There's been papers for at least a couple years, and it's been on some people's radar. I've been using it. I have it running locally with about 100 other models. The resources to run it are more significant than the other models, so I don't run it very often.
Yeah, I've been looking into it. So this is a reasoning model. Is that different than the chat models?
Sure. I'm not running the reasoning model, just the chat model.
Okay, cool. All right, so they released a research paper on Trump's inauguration day, and it wasn't so much the model. The model is doing well and is outperforming some of the older, previous models from the top American AI companies. But this research paper really shocked everybody, and it shocked Wall Street and Silicon Valley because they said they trained it on, 10,000 or less than 10,000 GPUs and $5-6 million, which is a very small amount. So it made everyone think that the big American AI companies are wasting money. They don't know what they're doing. NVIDIA stock dropped. They think that we won't need as many NVIDIA chips in the future. So What do you think about the cost and performance between this model and the other models?
Well, a couple things. I think the 5.5 or 5.6 million dollars that they said was used. I think that's just a small slice of what it actually took to get the model to the point where it is today. So I don't know that that's really representative. The performance, I think, is outstanding. I think it depends on what you're measuring, but everybody's assessment is that it's outperforming the current models. I think one thing to take into account is that this is a rapidly changing technology, and that what we're looking at now is their current state. And then when we're comparing it against ChatGPT 4, that really represents at least what was happening a year ago. And so I think in response, what we've seen the last couple of days is ChatGPT releasing new stuff to try to level the playing field, to have their current model measured against DeepSeek's current model, which is a more apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, and the cost comparison and the number of GPUs used, it doesn't account for all the GPUs that the hedge fund has and the resources that the hedge fund has. So they're essentially saying maybe the specific model was trained with not that much, but there's all of the practice runs and all the training and research that goes into just getting it to where you can train that model. What I think is interesting about it is the innovations that they came up with, the low-level GPU innovations. They rewrote some of the code that standard code that NVIDIA uses to make it more efficient between GPUs. And obviously it's kind of played out, but everyone on the news is always saying like necessity is the mother of invention. So, these scrappy, good engineers over there essentially were able to create a more efficient way of training and doing inference, which is pretty cool. And just from my perspective, I just think, it might not be this big event, whatever, but it is like the entree of China into the mix, right? With where they're actually competing at the same kind of weight class as these big American companies, even though they don't have quite as much money and they don't have quite as much access to the chips. But once the Chinese government kind of figures out how this fits into their plans, they get the weight of the Chinese government in behind them. Other Chinese companies start popping up. Maybe there's some kind of trend in China. This could be the moment that China really gets going on AI.
Sure. One thing that you didn't mention is that the work has actually been subsidized by the hedge fund. So it isn't just the Chinese government. There's actually the hedge fund's money went into subsidizing this company and subsidizing the resources behind their training.
We're talking about China versus AI. People are saying it might be a Cold War, AI Cold War, which I've seen coming for a while. Anybody's paying attention to geopolitics and AI knows that China's going to, they want to take AI leadership by 2030. That gives them like 5 more years. Some people are thinking there's going to be some form of AGI, artificial general intelligence, super intelligence, or semi-super intelligence within the next couple years, 5 years, whatever. I think most people are thinking it's within the next 10 years. All right, so what do you think about Chinese strategy? And they're committing to this open source versus the American companies are doing mostly closed source, although Meta is doing open source, but they're not revealing everything. But China has like opened the kimono, or not China, Deepseek, like this one company. And then the CEO of this company is committed to open source. They said they're not going to change in the future. What do you think about their strategy?
Yeah, I think their strategy really it gives us a lot to think about. I think there's several different ways that it can play out. I think that the CEO's commitment to the open source license and the MIT license that they're using can always change. I think that China can exert pressure there. I think there's a huge strategy for it to steal our mind share. I think the fact that they're the most competitive model in China has attracted a lot of intelligence, and the people in China being motivated to go support that model. Similarly, I think it draws a lot of the mind share from us to pay attention to their technology instead of our own technology, which will just basically undermine our ability to be strategic if things were to change with their model. But you're right, they do make more components. So there's 3 components of the open sourcing: the weights, the model itself. So you can run it locally on-prem, and that's the way I'm doing it, running on-prem. So I think that's one of the things that's not really pointed out very much. So when everyone's rushing to go use DeepSeek, they're actually rushing to tell DeepSeek all their secrets. So they're basically running to the internet saying, oh, these are the things that we weren't able to solve before. let me see how you weighed in at being able to solve these problems. And you're basically telling them all your secrets. So I'm running it locally. So when I'm doing it, nobody knows what I'm saying. And I think that's kind of the heart of the problem, at least from where I see it, that you kind of lose data sovereignty. So you actually don't stay in control of your information. And I think the public at large is really not aware of the risk that really poses for us.
Yeah, people have been mentioning that Deepseek is collecting a lot of data on the users and stuff. But if they're just fooling around with it, if it's not, some government sensitive or some business sensitive stuff. I mean, if some business is in there putting their trade secrets into Deepseek, obviously that ends up in a database in China, so that sucks for them.
Sucks for all of us.
OpenAI kind of rushed out. I don't know if it's rushed, but they seem to have released their next model, the O3 mini model, which is supposed to be similar to R1 in order to show that they're not, to kind of shore up their work and say, hey, we're on par with these people. And what do you think about, have you had a chance to review that one?
No, I haven't, but I think the concept of the mixture of experts or taking multiple models that are working in parallel and taking the results of it and looking at it over time. So I think it takes a little longer during the inference, but I think it's a lot more powerful. And so I think what we're going to see is a change in the overall architecture of how answers are returned to us. And I think it represents an overall change in how things are going to go. I mean, we saw that already in the ChatGPT model O1, and I think we're going to continue to see that change in the future.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like all of these AI companies are doing investigations on the R1 model to see how they achieve these efficiencies and achieve, this performance, because they want to kind of, just like China took what our companies were doing and used it to build their R1. Now our companies are looking at what they did, and it's kind of this back and forth. Also, you have to imagine the NSA and CIA are picking it apart. They had some sort of a cyber attack that from United States that who knows who that is or whatever. But there's a lot of interest and a lot of trying to figure out what their secrets are. What do you think the outcome of the Meta investigation and OpenAI, when their engineers kind of open it up, what are they going to find, and what can they use some of that to make their models better?
I think what we're going to see is a leapfrogging, right? So we've been seeing it so far where this model's ahead. And so I think as technological innovations happen, each of the trailing parties looks at it and runs up, and each has their day in the sunlight. And so I don't think that they're going to stay ahead for long. And yeah, you're right. Meta has been digging in. And I think Meta actually has the strongest strategy for the U.S. is to continue to pour resources into our open source model to attract and keep the people in the United States who are interested in it staying interested in American companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually good. I mean, the American companies weren't really feeling the heat. There was kind of this cartel, and they were kind of competing with each other, but it was all closed, and they were making, I mean, they're not making a ton of money, but they're planning on making money, taking a lot of investment. I think it's good. These hungry Chinese entrepreneurs kind of like, it's like Mark Cuban says, you got to act like there's someone on the other side of town in their garage waiting to kick your ass. I think it's good for AI. The competition, I think, is good. I mean, I don't want China's military to get some super powerful AI before us, but as humans, I want us all to have it as soon as possible, and for us to advance our species and our lifestyle and everything, economics. So the chips are still a big thing where there's export restrictions. We kind of control the chips. And so they have some that they got before. They're smuggling them, obviously. They're renting them from third-party countries. But it seems, I mean, my expectation is that Trump and his people and the tech bros are going to seize on the chips as a way to slow China down, because that will help their businesses. You got Elon Musk, he has an AI business, and the other guys too. They all want this. So I think what we're going to see is some sort of almost like chip embargo from the Trump administration. They're definitely going to tighten down these chips. So then, China has the chips that they have, and they will continue to use them more efficiently because they have to. But what do you think the effects of further chip restrictions, and then the next generation of chips are definitely not going to be able to get their hands on the next generation of chips.
I think there's a challenge there, right? Because I like comparing it to a cartel, because you're right. Without the competition, without the healthy competition, it doesn't motivate us the same way. And if everybody on our side is all kind of a cartel and not feeling the heat because everybody's a friendly, it doesn't encourage. But I think one of the challenges in not selling it to China is we actually stifle our own innovation because we're not bringing in the money, right? And so there's a logical end to us creating an embargo, actually effectively not continuing growth the way we would if it was just a pure market economy driving this. And so I think there's a number of different challenges that are needing to be balanced, and I guess we'll see how it goes.
But we can make up for that with subsidies, right? I mean, the government has to subsidize this shit. I mean, this has to go as fast as possible. They've been dragging ass. Biden was the anti-AI president, and honestly, thank God that we didn't have him again or Kamala, because Kamala was our AI czar, guys, like before Trump and them. So our AI is continuing apace. I think the government should be pouring money into it, not necessarily handouts to the tech bros, but I mean, especially on the chips. I mean, I think the AI companies probably have access to enough Silicon Valley money, but like nobody wants to invest in the chips because it's hard work. You can't make any money. Like the government needs to boost up the chips. And I think that can make up for any loss selling chips to China. I mean, we can't really afford to let them catch up to us. And like you recommended the Lex Fridman podcast to me. I've been watching it. There's the founder of Semi-Analysis blog on there, and he's obviously really smart. What I picked up from him is that this AGI strategy where whatever, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, like this AGI is coming. It's going to revolutionize business and everything, but I'm mostly concerned about the military, right? So China's military is going to have it. We're going to have it, whatever. What they're saying is that the industrial capacity of China for data centers, if they can get their hands on the chip, and then the Chinese government just wants to turn on the spigot of money, that they essentially could overtake us. You know, it's kind of like when Japan attacked us in World War II, like we had the industry and they didn't. And so once we ramped up, we basically overwhelmed them. Now it's like we don't have the industry. We have control of this IP. That's all we really have. Like they have the factories, they have the people, they have the engineers. Like if they turn it on in X number of years, they're just going to overwhelm us. Their AI is going to be more powerful or whatever. The only thing holding them back is these chips.
They do really out capacity us in all areas. So as soon as they ramp up on any one of these angles, they will surpass us. So it's really about our ability to take advantage of any of our advantages that we have now. And I think one thing that he left out is that this is fundamentally a power issue, meaning electricity power. And so their ability to generate more power than us will fundamentally be what shifts things. And so
yeah, the power thing. I mean, they just generate way more power. It's heavily subsidized. They don't have the environmental regulations.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, we can't produce enough power for the data centers, basically.
Right.
I guess like the last thing is I forget who it is, but some congressman or senator, I think it was a congressman, is introducing a bill to basically outlaw Deepseek, just like they did TikTok. I personally think this like redneck congressman shit is stupid. Like these people are like revealing how stupid they are, and they don't understand the competition, and they don't understand that won't do anything. You know what I mean? Like I understand the TikTok thing. You're like, it's poisoning the kids' minds. Like, okay, whatever. I get it. Outlawing DeepSeek R1 isn't going to help us. We have to figure out how to beat them, not just ban it. And like, that's what they did back in Chinese history. They just shut themselves off from the world. Like that's how we fuck ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that'll have the desired effect. I think even last night I didn't get a chance to totally consume it, but I guess Europe is having a different stance on putting protections in place. It will just basically stifle innovations. And so I think fundamentally this is a technological weapon. I think it's a weapon, and to look at it any other way is foolish. Yes, it can certainly help us fight the cure for cancer, but I think if that's anyone's real motivation, I don't believe it. And certainly not going to be China's motivation. As soon as it allows them to take advantage over us, they will not be finding the cure for cancer.
They didn't even care about the cure for COVID.
Well, they don't even care about not poisoning their people. So
yeah, well, do we though? I mean, realistically. So yeah, nobody cares about curing cancer. Everybody cares about money and power. And you know, you mentioned Europe. Europe is just bowing out of this gracefully. Like Europe is I don't know what the fuck they're thinking, but they're just letting us run with the AI. And it's like we've been talking about for a long time. There's only two countries that matter, China and the United States, because AI is the future and nobody else matters, and you're either going to jump in with us or jump in with them. And I think, there's going to be some like anti-colonial, African or different countries that are against us, and they're going to go with China because China will give them some money to be on their side. But, as the world splits on AI here, like Europe has to come with us, and, us plus Europe kind of beats China. And then the rest of the world shakes out how it shakes out. But I don't know, man. I mean, I just don't understand what Europe's doing personally.
No, neither do I. I certainly don't think we should stifle our own innovation by putting regulations in place because, like you point out, they're not going to have the desired effect.
In this sense, thank God we have Trump and these people, because at least on this, they will like make it go faster. You got any final thoughts?
No, like you said, thank God. Thank God we have Trump. Thank God we have Trump.
Yeah, for at least for the AI stuff. All right. Thanks, Ron. That was awesome. Awesome conversation. Talk to you again soon, all right? Thanks.
All right. Thanks, bud.
All right. So now we've got the debate portion of the show. We've got two of my good friends here, Dr. Matt Tipton and John Jackson, our Marine friend. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves real quick, starting with Matt.
I'm Matt Tipton. I was in 3rd Ranger Battalion. I currently live in West Tennessee. Glad to be back.
Hey, I'm John Jackson. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I'm a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Currently live in Miami, Florida.
All right, so the first topic is the mass deportations now that Trump is president. Just to get things started here, I looked at some of the numbers. It seems like they're deporting about 10% more people per day. It's going to take them a little while to ramp up. Other topics that are interesting are at least one veteran's kind of gotten snagged in the dragnet, and had to show his military ID and everything. And then Trump is trying to get Guantanamo Bay set up to hold 30,000 migrants on their way to being deported out. So Matt is going to go first.
I've seen a lot of hysteria online. I know the bishop that gave the speech when the president was there kind of went off the rails. I guess my question is what Trump's doing online with what other presidents have done? And I think it is. And I guess the next question would be, what happens in other countries, both developed countries and North Korea? Almost anywhere else, if you go there illegally, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get detained, and you're probably going to get deported or sent back home. And we're not even talking about the random families that have come over and are just trying to get work. We're talking about criminal deportations right now is what they're taking away. So there's no question, if you have a murderer or a rapist or a thief here, they don't need to be here and we don't need to pay for them.
It's a real misnomer that Democrats, liberals are not for a strong border and that we're against deportations. It's just not true. It's a Democratic establishment that is out of touch with the masses. When you've polled Democrats of color, Hispanic, Black, they tend to be more moderate to right on this issue. So I support what's being done, and I believe actually most Democrats do. It is really your wealthy coastal liberals, mostly white, who are against what's going on. The reality is you can't go anywhere in the world with and then to be open borders, and they're just like, cool, you can stay. I want them to be treated humanely. That's something we have to monitor. Are they being treated humanely?
All right, Matt, what about Guantanamo?
I like that it's a facility we already have. I question if we're going to put 30,000 people there, what ratio you have of guards, of food service individuals. I think to effectively provide health care, and I will speak to that as a doctor working in a prison, to that many prisoners, 30,000, I think you would need a full-time staff of 30 doctors and a couple hundred nurses. Then you're going to need guard, food production, laundry, all that. And, the prison I work at is mostly run by the prisoners. You're not going to have people that are angry and getting deported willingly go along with that. And if they resist and make it hard, you might need a 1-to-1 ratio of people running the facility and providing those services to the inmates. So it's going to be a big job. I'd like to see it happen, and I agree with John that we need to do it humanely.
The logistics he just laid out, if you want to call it that, for personnel, that's really important if you want a humane situation. When staff are overwhelmed, you can get an inhumane humanitarian crisis unintentionally. So I really hope the Trump administration is intentional about that. I'm not confident they will be. That's not a priority for them, since these are people who broke the law. But the reality is everyone, human beings, period, deserve to be treated humanely, even people who are incarcerated. So I don't know why you would not treat migrants humanely.
I think this needs to be done with a judge seeing every case and being well informed. I personally think a lot of the people here who are here illegally might have something to offer America, but we need to know who they are. And I would support sending them back and letting them get in line and come back and be given priority based on what they've done while they're here. So if they've been here for 10 years and worked and have a business and a family, that might get them some quote unquote promotion points to get back in.
All right, John, what do you think about deporting nonviolent?
I think it's ultimately going to happen. Not everybody can't stay. We don't have unlimited resources. We don't have unlimited funds. The reality is too much of a burden right now on our system. And I say that as, the grandson of an immigrant. Unfortunately, it's going to happen.
All right, that was great. Next topic is the DEI rollback that Trump and his people are instituting within the government. In this one, John will go first. Interesting topics we got to talk about are the DC plane crash being blamed on DEI, the DEI orders in the Department of Defense and across the government repealing DEI and firing DEI personnel, and the transgender ban, which is blocking new transgender recruits and trying to kick out the existing transgenders in the military. So, John will start on this one.
I think it's a culture war that's gone too far. I think it's not data driven, it is anger driven. And the reality is, you can make improvements in hiring, you can make improvements in government efficiency without making a haste generalization. It's a continuation of a campaign. And so I think it's a kind of dangerous way to make policy. It's a dangerous assumption to make. I think it's divisive. I think he could do everything he's doing without throwing DEI at it. And I think the biggest issue I have with this culture war is that it makes the assumption that minorities in prestigious places got there because there's a DEI program. And that's just not true. Americans of all shades have to work hard to get to where they are. It's a false assumption to assume not. That being said, no one should be excluded because of their race, and that includes white folks.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to tell you what a friend of mine who's African American and a physician told me. He's very anti-affirmative action because he had way higher scores than almost anybody I knew. But he said everybody always assumed that the reason he was where he was some sort of affirmative action. So I think minorities and females can be a victim of affirmative action when they were already on the upper end of the bell curve and would have had the job anyway. But people think, oh, you're only here because of that. There's no reason to believe if we just went off grades and exam scores or how fast you can run the sprint or whatever, you would get the position anyway. But when you put affirmative action in there, it puts a stigma on everybody that's in a category that's perceived to be gifted from that. And it hurts everyone.
Both sides of the aisle have been guilty of making it incredibly divisive. I'd like to see President Trump improve on clarifying it, because right now it's giving off the wrong idea to a lot of Americans. And I think if he wants to unite the country, I think some better communication is needed on exactly what he wants to do with this.
Okay, Matt, what about the transgender ban?
We're not letting people with a history of ADHD or anxiety join the military because they're deemed unfit. Gender dysphoria is an incredibly complex mental condition, and I sincerely feel for anybody that is so uncomfortable in their own skin that they need to alter their body with hormones or surgery. Probably one of the most stressful jobs you can do in the world is the kind of jobs that the three of us had. I don't know about the mental fitness of allowing transgender people in there. Now, if there's some computer coder satellite technician who's a genius and we need him to fight the Chinese and we're going to put them in that very limited job where they're not going to see combat, sure, maybe. But of all the mental conditions we're going to let in the military, I don't think that's the one to have a waiver for.
I don't think there's really any evidence that DEI has made the Department of Defense weaker. I think it's a culture war. That being said, I acknowledge that there are limitations to how a transgender person might be able to serve in the military. I don't think they should be barred completely. I do think anyone who wants to serve their country, we should find a way for them to serve. That doesn't mean they can do everything, but we definitely should find a way for them to serve.
Same sentiment. I think I at least know anecdotal stories of some problems that DEI has caused. There's so many different jobs in the military. I think anybody should be able to be a pack clerk. I think anybody should be able to be a cook. I think if you want to be a Navy SEAL, a Ranger, or Delta operator, if everybody that shows up and makes the highest score is Asian, Delta Force should be all Asian. That's my opinion. If it's all white guys from the Southeast or black guys from Detroit or whatever, doesn't matter. Whoever has the highest score and runs the fastest and has the best personality profile for the team, sure. I'll say the swim test in special operations, I think, was put in from a racial perspective, because I've heard senior leaders when I was in tell me that was the reason, and it had nothing to do with our job. If there's something like that, I think we should look at it and take it out. Ultimately, I want warheads on foreheads, and any guy that'll stand next to me and shoot at the bad guys with me, I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with them and happily fight alongside anybody. I've heard the funniest racist jokes in a room with several guys of all ethnicities who are all brothers, and we drink together and love each other.
I will say I agree. I think the transgender should serve, just not in combat. All right, the last topic is U.S. military on the border. We got U.S. military units on the border. Interesting things to talk about, guys, such as, are migrants a threat, national security threat that deserves military response? We've got the military flying migrants out and repatriating them. And then we also have talk of attacking the cartels who are trafficking the migrants up. Tier 1 units, airstrikes, all that shit. So if you guys want to get started, Matt?
It's a no-brainer. If we're going to send guys to NTC or Fort Polk or anything and do training, why can't we send them to the border and do their training there, run show of force patrols, make it harder for the cartels to move guys across the border until we get a actual border wall in place? I think an electronic border wall with drones and surveillance towers and satellite and have it all incorporated, I think that would be good. I worry about having an undisciplined National Guard unit with live ammo down there, somebody getting shot that doesn't need to be shot. And I want to say right now, I want nobody to be shot. I hope we can do all of this going forward with no casualties on our side, no migrants injured, just complete, safe, secure border with no violence.
I think the border's been out of control for a minute now, and I think we got to do something. I think it's a temporary solution, not a long-term solution, as Dr. Tipton said. Yeah, we definitely need some military presence on the border, given how out of control the border is.
I was watching Scarface the other day, and I think we need to hit overt targets publicly and declare them after we do them and say, hey, we did a mission here. We took out a fentanyl plant. We took out a fentanyl stockpile. We had one of our Switchblade missiles come in and kill this guy. But I think we also need a covert fear campaign where an entire wedding party for Cartel X all has a fentanyl overdose from the punch bowl or has an actual Hellfire missile blow them up. I think we need to do some dark stuff. I think some guys need to wake up with a horse head in their bed. I think we need to unleash some bad guys. Clear and Present Danger was a great movie. I hope the Trump administration watches that and follows.
If we're going to stop the cartel, we need to stop supplying the cartel with so many guns, so many illegal guns. So I think that's something we should also work on. We make the cartel more powerful with all the illegal guns they get from the United States. And that's not really a matter of gun control. I'm not really a strict gun control person. I just think that's a matter of law enforcement.
All right, well, we had some little technical difficulties at the end of the show, but that's the end of Real Veteran News 39. Thanks for watching, and watch again next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.